Good afternoon, everyone. We live in very special times, times in which we walk in two parallel realities. In the fiat reality, we are locked into a system that steals from us via inflation and taxation. This reality is making us weaker, more dependent and surveilled, with control mechanisms that are reaching new peaks of sophistication. In the Bitcoin reality, we are working day and night to build something new. We educate, develop, invest, and put our money where our mouth is. We minimize our dependency on the state and its institutions while practicing sovereignty and responsibility. Most of humanity is walking in the fiat path and is destined to convert to the CBDC path, which I call fiat on steroids. Central bank digital currency, CBDC, ties the financial freedom of citizens to the government and the digital establishment even further. Take everything that's bad in the fiat system and add more surveillance, more control, censorship, and enforcement capabilities. A modern prison? Indeed. CBDC is the ultimate prototype of a prison without physical chains. Whether they choose it or not, those on the fiat standard will be migrated to CBDC. Those who have taken the orange pill will join the orange path. But since most of us still live in a fiat standard reality, it's our duty to be aware where this is going and spread the word, as opting out and joining the orange path is the best solution. This is from the new campaign for CBDC in the EU, the European Union. Notice the positivity. Volume?
Payment solution that could be used for any kind of payment throughout the euro area. Guess what? It could become a reality. A digital euro. Easy, safe, fast, reliable. Digital money from the European Central Bank at your fingertips whenever you need it.
Right, so yeah, boo. Most of society prefers to swallow the convenient, comforting lies rather than check the facts and accept the unpleasant truth. We might be heading towards a CBDC future, or it may fail. I wish I had a crystal ball, but all I have is this presentation, and by the end of it, you'll be the judge whether a CBDC reality will happen or not. The CBDC system is able to determine expiration dates on the money, the use of a geographic radius, also known as geofencing, program the money to be used, there we go. Program the money to be used on certain things and not on others, and completely switch on and off digital wallets.
And, some people might see it as a darker world where the government decides that units of central bank money can be used to purchase some things, but not other things that it deems less desirable, like, say, ammunition or drugs or pornography or something of the sort. And that is very powerful in terms of the use of a CBDC.
So, some examples of programming your money may include you've used your card too much in a certain period of time. You may be limited because you're polluting the environment. You have consumed too much meat. Your quota has been reached, and your quota will be switched off. You've protested against the government or shared content that is dissident to the mainstream. Your digital wallet may be switched off. So those are things that we've seen already in Canada and Hong Kong, for example, but with CBDC, they become a lot easier. By connecting CBDCs to digital identity cards and to government systems such as universal basic incomes, social credit scores, carbon credit, and more, we get the ultimate control apparatus. These apparatus will dictate to citizens what they're allowed to purchase, what their permitted quotas are, while limiting consumption according to rules and use cases at program times, places, and cadences. According to the Human Rights Foundation CBDC tracker, which is a website that I recommend everyone to check out, 11 countries have already launched their CBDC. More than 130 are piloting, and out of which 36 countries are in advanced stages of piloting. It's just a matter of time till the whole world locksteps into this path. We see a few global trends that expedite CBDC rollout. First one is strengthening of the BRICS bloc, which Brazil is a part of. De-dollarization is another. Closing bank accounts and closing banks completely. Reducing cash and privacy, and even sometimes going completely cashless, as happens in some places. And government wants to avoid completely Bitcoin, and they see it as a threat. So for them, CBDC is the answer for it. Let's take a look at Thailand. In 2023, Thailand launched a pilot where people received free money, basically were bribed, with about $280 worth of Thai baht, a lot of money for the average Thai, with an expiry date of 6 months and a geofence of 4 kilometers radius where they can spend the money. Based on this recent success, and yes, they call it a success, they were planning a second pilot of a digital token payout to 50 million lower-income earners last month, aimed at encouraging them to spend in their local communities. It's a 500 million baht, which is $400 million plan of money created out of nothing. The development of the digital wallet tied to the digital ID was not ready on time, so they ended up depositing cash directly to people's bank accounts instead of launching the digital wallet. They postponed it a little bit, but they said in an official press release that don't worry, we continue to working and this will come very soon. So at the moment it's delayed a little bit. According to this plan, the CBDC pilot is supposed to implement spending control through programmable money, allowing the purchase of certain items, including food and household items, and excluding fuel, electronics, alcohol, tobacco, and more. Remember, in order to participate in this pilot, this free money, people have to register in the government taxing system and disclose their income details. That's the digital ID program that is happening in parallel to the CBDC. Thailand is part of the mBridge project. I don't know if you've heard about that project. It's a Bank of International Settlements, BIS-led CBDC project for cross-border payments involving various countries. Recently, the Bank of International Settlements announced that they're leaving that project, and they're basically leaving it to China to lead this project now, and there are certain countries involved in this project. Thailand and China last month announced a partnership around promoting that kind of cross-border payments. And we need to keep watching that project because it's one of the more prominent ones. China spent a couple of years rolling out a relatively failed CBDC project without widespread adoption, while injecting 30 million yuan as free money to encourage user adoption. Alipay and WeChat are the biggest competition, and that's the reason why it didn't take off. So those are the two large bars on the graph of the top. You have Alipay and WeChat Pay. They're the biggest ones in China today, and so people didn't see a reason why they should start using the CBDC system from the government. But recently, WeChat and Alipay, which have a traffic of about $4 trillion a year, integrated the digital yuan service into their apps, which can be the beginning of a widespread adoption and scale. You know what they say, if you can't beat them, join them. But in terms of adoption, the digital yuan is lagging behind Bitcoin. Even with the WeChat Pay and Alipay integration, it's processing $14 billion after 2 years, while Bitcoin processed about $8 trillion in just 1 year. People tend to think China is failing with their CBDC. I'm not so sure about that. They have the patience and the resources to keep trying in various ways. For example, recently, Hong Kong started accepting the digital yuan, and more players are joining that mBridge project that I told you about. That's all the logos of the different central banks. So similarly to Thailand, more countries are using CBDC for welfare and universal basic income, UBI, because starting with the weak is always a winning tactic, right? For example, the Korean Central Bank is developing a voucher program for use on smartphones, which can be used for welfare, culture, education, and other services. Similarly, in India, a first CBDC-backed program was launched for government subsidies, handing out 10,000 digital rupee annually. Makes sense. They start where it's easy. Okay. Israel suggested a plan recently to remove the 200 shekel banknote out of circulation as part of a bigger plan to abolish cash and advance CBDCs in the country. Read more about it in an article that I wrote on Bitcoin Magazine. But Israel essentially is very advanced in its preparations for CBDC, called the digital shekel. Several pilots already deemed successful, as you can see their names on the left-hand side. By analyzing Bank of Israel's white papers and documents, I gained a lot of valuable insights. So Israel reveals that the rollout plan for CBDCs will start by targeting first government payments, like Preston Pish was just saying before, taxation, fines, allowances, then public sector employers' salary, then business payments, and so on. So they start with the essentials. That will be paid in CBDC first. Basically, they want minimum friction for you and I, for the end users. Hence, they suggest a seamless back-end replacement, keeping all the existing payment methods in place so you can continue using your credit cards, your wearables, your payment apps. They won't take it away. They'll just replace the CBDC in the background. Well, the fiat to CBDC. An interesting use case example from one of Israel's latest hackathons reveals the capability for disabling and freezing wallets. Thailand shows us the exact same use case implemented in a hackathon. If I'm not mistaken, Brazil has showed us the same use case as well. The architecture design reveals how the Bank of Israel will implement CBDCs in a two-tier system. Financial institutions, for example, commercial banks and other companies, will be authorized to lend CBDC from central banks, just like fiat, and manage it for the end user. Thailand shows us a very, very similar architecture. When recently asked, the Bank of Israel executive said that in 2018, the Bahamas hurricane collapsed their financial infrastructure, which resulted in launching their CBDCs. And hopefully, Israel will not face an emergency that will force it to do the same. That's quite a telling example to choose for when we are going to launch that. Australia is going cashless pretty heavily, and now with the digital identity bill that passed, the pieces of the puzzle are coming together. These are all prerequisites for CBDC, so keep an eye out on Australia. The European Union launched a marketing campaign, which you saw at the beginning, to promote the digital euro about 6 months ago, to start educating the European public about the reality where they'll be obliged to use the digital euro. Christine Lagarde kicked off this propaganda. The rollout phase will start at the end of 2025.
The digital euro is on the move. Yesterday, the Governing Council of the ECB approved the opening of the preparation phase. It will be a journey, and we will walk the journey together with the legislator. All European institutions will be involved to make sure that Europe is equipped with the currency of the future.
Yeah, more of that beauty can be found on Christine Lagarde's Twitter account. Have you wondered what BRICS nations are up to? Oh, don't worry. they're also working on their own implementation of CBDC. Each BRICS country is doing so independently, but also together through initiatives such as the Enbridge project. And BRICS Pay is the CBDC platform to unify trade and payments between the different BRICS nations. We're getting to Brazil, where we are right now. So while the first pilot of Drex was not a great success, it started in 2023, the government has, just like in China, low time preference and patience, and therefore they're trying again with a second phase, which started already, to implement 13 use cases with more than 50 companies, including Visa, MasterCard, and Santander Bank, to name a few. This effort aims to sort out the whole wholesale CBDC part. Imagine that will work out, and then it will be integrated with your very, very popular PIX service, which is the retail side of CBDC, and then you have the wholesale and the retail, and whoops, you've got CBDC working in the country. So I think Brazil is quite advanced in its stages to kick off CBDC soon, like as a full scale. Okay, oh, sorry. My next example is actually not a country or a state, but rather a crypto company, or should I say a shitcoin company. Ripple is implementing its own CBDC platform with about 20 governments and central banks trialing it out, and it already completed 6 successful pilots with those central banks and governments. So let's take a look.
I often get asked the question, what's the most exciting thing about CBDCs and stablecoins? In one word, innovation. My name is James Wallace and I head up CBDC at Ripple. You might already know that over 90% of central banks around the world are now exploring CBDCs. There are many drivers for CBDC, including the decline of cash, improving payments efficiency, lowering costs, and the desire to innovate the ways in which money is used. Ripple's CBDC platform is your one-stop shop for the creation of digital currency, designed for minting, managing, transacting, and redeeming CBDCs and stablecoins.
Wonderful. We can always trust Ripple. Okay, next up, Nigeria. Ripple doesn't want to go away. Come on, okay. The first African nation to launch a CBDC, the e-Naira, has been around for about 3 years, and it didn't exactly succeed. The citizens took to the streets to protest the changes in cash and resented the introduction of an unneeded digital solution while demanding the return of cash. So after a few weeks, the cash was returned alongside the e-Naira that stayed there. The bright side is that many Nigerians chose Bitcoin at that time. A new IMF report notes that the e-Naira has to date accounted for only about $20 million worth of transactions, which is very low, and only 13 million wallets have been created out of a total population of 226 million, and 98% of them are completely inactive. But listen to Charlene Hill Fadirepo to understand how concerning the e-Naira implementation is.
But there are some things that are very concerning about the e-Naira. First and foremost, there's a tiered withdrawal limit system. So basically you have 4 tiers from bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, and you literally get access to your money based on the amount of information you choose to share with the government. So essentially, the Central Bank of Nigeria is policing the wealth of its individual citizens. So on the low end...
Yeah, that's quite concerning. Now, while you all know and understand the benefits of stablecoins, and it's been discussed here quite a bit until now, especially in places like emerging markets and many countries with high inflation, where they're literally a lifeline, we should pay attention to the compromise of this technology in the hands of states. A probable scenario is that in the face of public resistance to CBDCs, States may launch their own official stablecoin or authorize commercial banks to issue their own tokenized stablecoin. This can have the same features of a programmable CBDC, but with a different brand to make the pill easier to swallow. Let's take a look at some examples of stablecoins in the making by countries. In Nigeria, the CNGN is a stablecoin to be backed by the biggest banks and used mostly for cross-border payments, and some claims that it's going to be a lot more successful than the e-Naira. Israel is working on a new stablecoin pilot pegged to the shekel called Bills, developed and regulated by a regulated crypto exchange platform. A few examples in Australia, who's leading the way on that front. The National Australian Bank has completed a pilot of intra-bank cross-border transaction using a stablecoin on Ethereum blockchain with smart contracts. ANZ Bank issued its own stablecoin, and there are private initiatives too, like the EAUD, a horrible name. The United Arab Emirates partners with Tether to launch the AED, an official stablecoin backed by the dirham. And here in Brazil, you have legal experts. I think you have some really good people trying to make a change and not bring about the CBDC, but still they're working with some federal ministers, etc., to try and reverse that. Like a person that contacted me, his name is Pedro Torres, and thank you for all the information you sent me. So they're trying to do basically a good thing by stopping CBDCs, but really they're preaching for a stablecoin, an official stablecoin of the state. BlackRock is supporting the issuance of an Ethena stablecoin. In the US, Republicans are passing legislations to enable the creation of stablecoins by the commercial banking system. And Trump said recently, I heard him say that in Nashville in the Bitcoin conference, that he will not allow CBDCs, not on his watch. However, he will work on regulating stablecoins to extend the dominance of the US dollar. And this, are you ready? This is the IMF, International Monetary Fund propaganda, bribing, and coercion mechanism to push CBDCs. It's called READY, Regulation, Education, Design, and Incentives, including monetary and non-monetary incentives for intermediaries and end users. You've been warned. Okay, sorry. This is reality, everything I told you so far. So I'm sorry if this made you a little bit nauseous, but I'm an optimist, so let's take a walk on the bright side. Germany's central bank's latest document shows that at least they're aware of the public outrage that can come about. They admit excessive surveillance and that their decisions are extremely sensitive and can hurt trust of citizens. So at least they're aware. This guy from the Israeli central bank is so threatened that he has to revert to FUD and shaming of Bitcoin. The digital shekel will not be developed by some unknown Satoshi Nakamoto. The central bank we all know and trust will be behind your CBDCs. Don't worry, little peasants. In the US, Florida, South Dakota, Alabama, Indiana, as well as RFK Jr. and Trump all show objections to CBDC. In June, Bitcoin rights have become law in Louisiana, which passed that landmark pro-Bitcoin bill to protect access to Bitcoin and curb CBDCs, which is really good news. Last month, the House passed a bill that will ban CBDC in the US on the federal level if finally approved, actually a few months ago. This is Senator Tom Emmer.
That's why I reintroduced a bill yesterday called the Central Bank Digital Currency Anti-Surveillance State Act, which puts a check on unelected bureaucrats and ensures that the United States digital currency policy upholds our values of privacy, individual sovereignty, and free market competitiveness.
Canada held a public survey about CBDC recently with 90,000 people. We see total lack of trust of people in the Bank of Canada and government. Everything that is yellow signifies lack of trust. Canada recently announced shelving the the CBDC project for now. Who knows what could happen or what stablecoin could pop. The UK saw a strong public backlash to Prime Minister Sunak last year, with 50,000 responses sent to the Bank of England following a public hearing of the digital pound. El Salvador is clearly showing another possible way to develop a country's financial future which is not based on CBDCs. President Bukele announced recently that El Salvador would no longer rely on external debt to finance its budget, declaring the country has achieved financial independence. As Ayn Rand said, we can ignore reality, but we cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. We have become too accustomed to the government taking away our freedom and returning it to us on its own terms. If we just let the frogs sit there, they'll boil to death, and we'll have a new CBDC dark reality. We have the possibility of showing people the dark path and offer them the orange path instead. On my blog, you can find these comparison slides with 12 points to compare CBDC and Bitcoin. Feel free to download these from my blog and use them as a resource. Just like we're being censored and our freedom of speech is violated, with CBDCs we'll be financially censored and our freedom to transact will be violated.
A euro will always be a euro.
The euro will always be a euro. We know that that's not true. However, one Bitcoin will always be one Bitcoin. Jump over to the new orange path and offer those who choose to join an option to do so. If you stand for freedom, embrace money that enables freedom and has the potential to create a brighter reality. Thank you very much.